On August 15, 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio recorded a 72-second burst of radio waves from deep space so strong and unusual that the astronomer reviewing the printout days later circled the reading in red pen and wrote a single word beside it: "Wow." To this day, nearly 50 years later, no one has ever definitively explained where the signal came from. This isn't science fiction or internet speculation. The WOW signal is one of the most rigorously documented events in the history of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, discussed at length in peer-reviewed astronomy journals, and the original printout still exists, preserved as a physical artifact. In nearly 50 years since, humanity has pointed some of the most powerful radio telescopes ever built at the exact same patch of sky, hoping to hear it again. Not once has anything similar been detected in that direction, leaving one of the strongest candidate signals ever recorded permanently unrepeated and permanently unexplained. The Big Ear Radio Telescope at Ohio State University's Perkins Observatory operated as part of an early SETI program, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, scanning the sky automatically for radio signals near the hydrogen line, a precise frequency of 1420.4 megahertz, long theorized by scientists, including Frank Drake, as a likely choice for any intelligent civilization to broadcast on, since hydrogen is the single most abundant element in the universe, and its emission frequency is a fixed, universal physical constant that any technological species observing the cosmos would eventually discover. Big Ear itself was an unusual instrument even by the standards of the era, a flat, field-sized fixed reflector rather than a movable dish, using the Earth's own rotation to slowly sweep its narrow beam across different strips of sky each day rather than being aimed manually. The telescope ran largely unattended around the clock, its output automatically punched onto continuous paper feed as columns of numbers and letters representing signal strength left for volunteers and astronomers to review afterward by hand. Often days or even weeks after the data had actually been recorded, since Big Ear generated far more paper each day than anyone had time to check in real time. Several days after August 15th, Ohio State astronomer Jerry Amon, a volunteer reviewer for the project, was working through stacks of the telescope's paper printouts at his kitchen table when he found a sequence of characters reading 6EQUJ5, a code representing the signal's intensity climbing sharply from background noise, peaking, and then falling away again over exactly 72 seconds, the length of time it took the fixed telescope's beam to sweep across a single point in the sky as the Earth rotated beneath it. The reading was roughly 30 times stronger than the normal background noise the telescope usually registered, and its shape rose and fell in a smooth curve consistent with a real astronomical source rather than random interference or equipment error. Amon circled the 6-character sequence in red pen and wrote "Wow" in the margin beside it, a spontaneous, unplanned note that ended up giving the signal its lasting name for the rest of scientific history. The telescope's fixed orientation and known sweep pattern allowed astronomers to calculate that the signal had originated from a specific point in the sky near the star group Chi Sagittarii, in the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, toward the galactic center. Astronomers quickly noted that the signal's frequency matched the hydrogen line to within a fraction of a percent, precisely the frequency long theorized as a likely deliberate choice for an extraterrestrial broadcast, and a frequency that occurs naturally almost nowhere else with that specific signature. It was also within a narrow protected radio band that international agreement kept largely free of terrestrial broadcasting interference, specifically because of its scientific importance. But despite repeated, deliberate follow-up observations aimed at the exact same coordinates over the following decades, including at least 50 separate attempts by Amon himself using Big Ear in the years immediately after, and further searches by other astronomers using the Very Large Array and other far more sensitive, far more advanced telescopes, built long after Big Ear was gone. The signal never repeated. Not once, in nearly 50 years of pointed searching at the exact same patch of sky. The complete and total lack of repetition made it uniquely difficult to study, verify, or classify using any of the normal scientific tools available for confirming an astronomical detection. Decades of proposed explanations followed, each eventually running into a problem. In 2016, an amateur researcher named Antonio Paris suggested the signal came from hydrogen gas surrounding one of two comets, 266P Christensen or 335P Gibbs, that happened to be passing through that part of the sky, a theory that received wide media coverage at the time. It was quickly and thoroughly disputed by other professional astronomers, including Eman himself, who pointed out that neither comet was actually confirmed to be in the correct position on August 15, 1977. Both were only discovered decades later, making their 1977 positions difficult to verify precisely. And that comets don't naturally produce a radio signature anywhere near strong enough to match the WOW signal's specific intensity and shape. Military or terrestrial interference was also considered early on and largely ruled out, since the signal behaved exactly as expected from a genuinely fixed point in deep space, slowly passing through the telescope's narrow beam as the Earth rotated, not a stationary ground-based source broadcasting from Earth, which would have produced a very different signal pattern entirely. Secret military satellite transmissions, reflected signals bouncing off space debris, and instrumental glitches in Big Ear itself were each proposed and each eventually discounted by researchers who examined the equipment's technical logs. No natural or artificial explanation has ever been definitively proven correct. The Big Ear telescope itself continued operating for another 2 decades after the signal, until it was dismantled in 1998 to make way for the expansion of a nearby golf course, closing off any possibility of ever using the original instrument to search that same patch of sky again with the exact hardware that made the original detection. The original computer printout, Eamon's red circle and handwritten WOW, still clearly visible on the aging paper, is preserved today at the Ohio History Center and remains one of the most famous physical artifacts in the entire search for extraterrestrial life. Jerry Eman himself remained publicly cautious about the signal for the rest of his life, repeatedly telling interviewers that a single, non-repeating detection wasn't enough evidence to claim contact with an alien civilization, even as the signal he found became one of the most famous unsolved mysteries in modern astronomy. He died in 2023, having spent nearly 5 decades fielding the same question from journalists and researchers alike, and having given essentially the same careful, scientifically honest answer every time. Fascinating, unexplained, but not proof of anything. Modern SETI researchers continue to point next-generation radio telescopes at the same coordinates near Sagittarius whenever observing time allows, partly out of genuine scientific curiosity and partly out of respect for one of the field's founding mysteries. Whether the WOW signal was a natural cosmic phenomenon, science simply hasn't identified yet. An undiscovered quirk of Big Ear's own unusual instrumentation, or genuinely something else entirely, it remains exactly what Eman labeled it the moment he found it, in red ink, in the margin of a printout nearly 50 years ago. Unexplained.